Welcome to Unrestrained, the podcast series from CPI. Here you can enjoy conversations where professionals on all sides of crisis and behavior management relax and open up about themselves, their workplace, and their clients. You'll get the latest tips and trends from the best in the business, so tune in often to integrate their experiences with your own. Hello and welcome to Unrestrained, the CPI podcast series. This is your host, Terry Vitone, and today I'm joined by D.C. Foster. He is a behavioral health intervention specialist at the Arizona State Hospital and a CPI master level certified instructor. Hello and welcome, D.C.
Hi, how are you doing, Terry?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Well, I'll tell you more as I'm getting ready to go home.
All right.
I'm doing okay right now.
All right. Well, let me tell you a little more about my guest in our interview today. For more than 30 years, D.C. Foster has provided long-term inpatient care and treatment to patients with mental disorders, personality disorders, or emotional conditions. Treatment at the Arizona State Hospital is considered the highest and most restrictive level of care in the state. Patients are admitted as a result of an inability to be treated in a community facility or due to their legal status. Our interview today will focus on the results of the hospital's transition in 2013 to a new model featuring a cohesive team approach where direct care staff is fully engaged in all aspects of care. According to the hospital's website, quote, "This culture of care creates a better therapeutic environment for patients and residents to live and improve safety for everyone. And a central feature of implementation is CPI's nonviolent crisis intervention training for more than 700 members of the hospital staff," end quote. All right, DC, could we begin today then by having you talk about the population you serve, your role as a behavioral health intervention specialist, and then please give us an idea of some of the challenging behaviors that you typically encounter and the nature of your interventions.
Okay. Our hospital is a multi-treatment facility. We have a civil hospital and stuff where we treat PAD, GD, and DTO and DTS behaviors. The PAD stands for persistently and acutely disabled. The GD is gravely disabled. DTO is danger to others and danger to self. We also have a forensic hospital. Our forensic hospital houses criminals who have been adjudicated, and they have a community reintegration program when they reach a certain level, a higher level, where they're able to go out and stuff, but they're monitored when they go out. We also have an SVP, which is sexually violent persons, and they've been committed to us for treatment from the courts. My role, essentially, as the behavioral health intervention specialist, is to work with the teams on the unit. If there's a problem that could be a danger to others with an individual who becomes dysregulated and violent, I'm usually asked to go and see and support the team in a number of ways. You asked me for something else, Terry.
Well, some of the challenging behaviors that you might encounter when you get a call to go and assist.
Well, we have individuals with varied backgrounds and stuff, but they have a mental disorder and stuff. So we may have individuals with weapons, makeshift weapons, knives. They sneak things in through the to the facility, I should say, through the mail and other areas like that. They try razor blades, and they make weapons basically out of anything. They'll tie ropes together or make rope or braided rope and stuff. They'll do things to try and intimidate the staff here. It's a wide variety of stuff. We have a contraband board and stuff that shows things that we've caught over the years and stuff besides knives and shanks and toy guns or cap guns and stuff that look very real.
So you see improvised weapons that could very well be lethal then?
Yes, and to staff. And part of the de-escalation and deceleration approach that we use is CPIs to bring this to either slow down the behavior or bring it to a complete halt and stuff. The individuals usually want something in return, so it's like a negotiation process that I'm involved in along with the team.
I see. Well, so when were you first DC certified in CPI nonviolent crisis intervention training, and how important do you feel that CPI training is in helping to sustain a culture of care and safety at the hospital?
Well, it's at the core of everything we do. I'm at 2012, I believe, is when we did it. We had CPI at the state hospital years ago. They switched to several different ones during that course, and we returned back to CPI. In terms of its application and how to use it effectively, we work with the individuals. We try to develop the rapport that CPI talks about with many of the individuals and stuff, the heavy hitters on the various units, and try to build an alliance relationship as opposed to an adversarial one. We try to diffuse things before they get started. So we have like a prevention focus. We meet in terms of like rounds with the individual every day. At least I do. I'll go to the different units and stuff and just talk, communicate with them, and if they have any issues and stuff, let me know and see what I can do for them. So we try to get ahead of the problems before they start.
So your prevention starts with rounds every morning.
Yes.
That's impressive. So which staff departments at the hospital are trained in nonviolent crisis intervention? I see you trained 700. I imagine you've trained more since then. And do you feel that fidelity of training is important to providing a consistent or common language and violence prevention values to your staff?
Well, again, we train everyone who comes into the hospital who is basically not a contract person. If you have direct patient contact, you're trained. And we put emphasis not only in the training and stuff, but we encourage people to go out and talk and intermingle and interact with the patient populations on the various units. Again, your other question was, the tail end of that question was what now?
Well, did you personally, as a master level instructor, do you feel that this fidelity of training, that is, that you train everybody, is that really important to providing a consistent language among different departments and different staff?
Well, absolutely and stuff. The language is important for a number of reasons. One of the things we try to eliminate from our vocabulary is no, to tell an individual no. For instance, there was an incident that occurred where the resident or the staff was involved in an activity, and one of the patients had made a request who wasn't involved in the activity. The person had said no, and at that point, the patient became upset and started tossing things around and destroying the room, breaking property, and there's a lot of damage to the area. So we try to eliminate no from our vocabulary and stuff in common language. We try to talk to the patient in terms of what is it that you need, how can I help you right now, instead of blaming or saying no.
I see.
It takes a lot of skill not to say no during the course of the day.
I can only imagine. I mean, with some of the extremity of behavior and of the diagnosis of the patients that you see, I imagine that there's some really difficult behavior to not respond to with a negative right away. And did you find? Now you were trained, I believe, in 2012 or 13.
Well,
In 2012. And how often do you train? How many people do you think you've trained in your experience as a trainer, DC? Sorry to hit you with that. I'm just wondering if you have a ballpark.
I'm going to say I'm in the thousands.
Wow. How about that?
I will also sit in on classes that some of the other trainers do since I'm the most senior and work with them. And, it doesn't reflect in it's their class and stuff, but I want to make sure that, again, we talked about the fidelity of instruction. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that there's an understanding and there's participation in the training and stuff so that there's a clear understanding about what we mean, the terms, how we use them and stuff, and how we apply them.
I see. Now, to go along with this, I think it's really fascinating that you take this as a kind of a core value not to say no. But you told me, DC, in our pre-interview that the staff at Arizona State has a saying whatever it takes to stay hands-off. Could you tell me why that phrase is so relevant to your care philosophy and methods?
Well, number one, anytime you put your hands on an individual and stuff, the potential for violence, escalation of behavior, also having a ripple effects with the other people, the other patients on the unit, it increases greatly. It becomes exponential and stuff. Whatever it takes, essentially, it's kind of like our mantra, the instructor's mantra. And what we want to do is we want to try to resolve the issues and problems and stuff without physical contact and stuff. In that way, we can convey that things can be worked out without the threat of violence. And that seems to be pretty good and stuff. There was a period in a culture probably much before ours and stuff where they initiated what they called takedowns. You
eliminated that?
Yeah, we no longer had that. Even before, one of the things we saw, even prior to 2012, when CPI was reintroduced to us, is that there seems to be no problem with that. There were injuries coming up. It was a goal to get the patient off their feet and stuff, and it usually meant going to a ground, whatever ground that was, including concrete and other things like that. It made them less dangerous and stuff, but the injuries had went up. So we made it a special focus of ours to see if we can decelerate those behaviors or de-escalate those behaviors through verbal communication.
And that would also fit right in line with CPI's value of creating the least restrictive environments possible.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like prevention is a very central value there at Arizona State Hospital.
Uh, much, very much so and stuff. And we're trying to teach that and get out to get people to get in front of situations and stuff. We talked about language before, and we have a little language that we use. Escalation is one of the things that we talk about or we document a lot. But our language here as instructors is pre-escalation, pre-intervention, pre-crisis, preconditions and stuff. We want to know what's happening before that occurs and stuff. And if we can get a handle of what kind of conditions arise prior to that, we can work on those kinds of things to avoid the latter, which is the violent and aggressive behavior.
So you have a lot of due diligence steps built into the process to preempt anything that would lead to an escalation.
Yes, and we're trying new things every day. Give you one example and stuff. We had an individual who loved music and stuff, and he was very difficult to move from the patio from the day room. There was problems with that. We wound up putting a music box out on the patio and stuff to make sure that patients got fresh air. And everybody kind of gravitated to it, including him. There was no more problem, but he wanted some of his environment to go with him, and that was the issue and stuff. So we made it kind of homey for him. We played his music, and we had less trouble and stuff like that. And this is a pretty big guy.
You know, that sounds simple, but I imagine it's deceptive to have actually realized what the solution was going to be to make that outside environment more comfortable and familiar to him.
And that's pretty accurate. We try to do that with many of our individuals and stuff. We allow them to bring books out, pictures. We make their outdoor patio time worthwhile and stuff. If they want to bring things from their rooms or from their areas or get stuff from their property, they're permitted to do that too, to keep on the unit and stuff, as long as it doesn't constitute a buildup of material and stuff like that, because we like the rooms and the areas to be clean and free.
So you need a certain amount of visible control, but within that parameter, you allow some customization for the building rapport, which leads to my next question, which I'll go into here. DC, in one of your guest blogs, you write, and we'll link these in our podcast blog. We'll have a link to the fine collection of blogs you've written for CPI. You write, quote, "I find the building of rapport and being trauma-informed synonymous and inextricably tied together, resulting in healthier and more positive outcomes for our population." I would love it if you'd unpack that statement for our listeners.
Well, rapport is a key component of ours, and we train through our new employee orientation to start building rapport the minute you walk through the doors. We have an understanding here that the rapport starts when you first enter the patient's population, as you come through the door. And it's not only based upon you and the individual you may be dealing with, but other people and other patients will see that too. And they will assess our patient population. We'll kind of assess and look at it and saying, is this someone I want to talk to or deal with as you deal with another patient and stuff? So people will be watching all the time. Being trauma-informed and stuff is understanding some of the difficulties that many of our patients have gone through and stuff. And in doing that, we have to open and create that dialogue again. In creating that dialogue and stuff, we can find out what kinds of things were traumatic to that person, what they want to speak about, how we need to approach them, things like that. And it's worked out pretty good for us and stuff. There was a period, I'm going to say probably 30 years ago, when you would wake up people by turning on the lights and things like that. Well, sometimes turn on the lights of their rooms to get up in the day, in the morning. And sometimes one of the things that they would do is they turn off the light. So we would ask people now, as opposed to 30 years ago, instead of banging garbage cans together, screaming, "Wake up, wake up, wake up," we go in there, we leave the lights off and stuff, and we let them know that there's wake up time so they can get their ADLs and things like that together. We also incentivize that by bringing sometimes coffee, or we did with bringing coffee and donuts and things like that out in the day room in the morning and stuff. So when there's a community meeting, the patients they can have a little snack, I should say.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, when you start an initial conversation with a patient, how do you? It must be a really artful thing to be able to to kind of ask them about the trauma that they might have endured in their life before the hospital. I mean, how do you initiate a conversation like that?
Well, it involves just an interview and stuff. A couple of things. I also use like a patient interest and aptitude kind of questioning. Go about what are the things they like to do, what are the things they're good at, and then could they teach them? We have people who teach chess to other people, patients. But we sit down again. It's as simple as just asking and stuff. Is there anything you want to tell me about your growing up? Or what do you like? What's your dislikes? And we don't focus so much on the likes. We like to build our plans around strength-based information. So essentially, those patients that give us that information, we ask them, is there any way that we can help you replicate those things in here if there's safe interventions? And the patient will talk to us about that, and we can bring that to the treatment team and see if we can do that. If, we had patients who like to do graffiti. We actually put this person in an art class, rehab and stuff. So we didn't look at graffiti as anything bad, and he made it colorful and very nice and stuff. He had some artistic talent and stuff. So when people hear graffiti, they thought about writing on the walls and things like that. So we gave him walls and papers and posters that he could practice his craft on and stuff, and that made him happy.
So very proactive and positive solutions after going after in that interview, determining what the interests and I suppose talents of what the patients are. How many patients are in Arizona State right now that you manage?
I'm going to guess here. Our number probably is 243, somewhere around there and stuff. We used to be as high as 1,400, not the state hospital per se, but when we were the territorial insane asylum, we had 1,400 people.
You have quite a storied history there. I think your facility was built in the 1870s at some point.
That's correct.
And so it's been a long, you have quite a storied history.
We have some history here, being that we're the only state hospital in the area. We used to get people from Stockton, California that were carted our way and stuff during those particular times in the early 1800s. We've had some celebrities here that I can't really talk about. We have a graveyard here that's been on the property for a long time. We had a Buffalo soldier who was buried here and stuff, and there was a movement to get him from our grave plot in our hospital area out to Washington, and the word escapes me how you get him out of the ground and stuff. But they did that, excavate him. They did that, and they brought him to Washington, and he's now buried in Arlington and stuff with the recognition.
That's beautiful. You have two acronyms there at Arizona State, CARE and STEP, that we talked about in our pre-interview, and I think they're really powerful. And they're used at the hospital as reminders of your foundational values. Could you talk about CARE and STEP and what they stand for and how they inform staff behavior?
What we do here, we have a weekly post that people and our administrators are committed to weighing in on. That includes our CEO, our CMO, our chief nursing officer, and all the way down the line, our executive administrative staff. CARE, C-A-R-E, is creating a respectful environment, and we look for things and ways to be able to do that. We take our tips from the patients and the other staff who have a load of talent and stuff like that, and we utilize the talent that we have, and we put that to paper and stuff so people can read it and remind themselves about why we're here, and it's for the patients and the residents. The STEP is safety takes every person. That's what the STEP is about, and we look for ways to make safety catches and stuff. If we see something that may be amiss or going amiss and stuff like that, we want to report those, and we recognize those people who look for those safety opportunities, and so much as doing the little things and stuff. I myself have picked rocks up off the patient grounds that was done when we had it, our hospital was in its infancy in our landscaping, and every time it would rain, bigger rocks would come uncovered and stuff. So we got a contingent of staff to go out and pick these rocks up so that they couldn't be weaponized. I mean, things that simple. If we see a piece of paper on the floor or something on the concrete grounds outside and stuff, we take the responsibility to pick that up ourselves and stuff. We're not waiting for groundskeeping. We're looking to have the best environment possible for our patients and our staff.
Excellent. Now, DC, in the past, you've shared stories with CPI about behavioral crises that occur at the hospital. Could you share one of those with our listeners?
Well, this one doesn't make me look too good.
You're a brave man.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the beginning when I was hired. One of the things was that our patients had bands on their hands, and the bands would signify their ability to have access to the grounds. We had a gold band, which was like unlimited grounds per se, and that meant being able to leave the unit and coming back or checking in at certain times, medication times, and change of shift times and stuff, and then be on time for lunch and dinner. Our blue bands, our green bands were next in line, which gave them certain hours to be out, and they needed to be on the unit. Our blue bands, which the ratio was 1 to 5. A staff could take 5 of them out. They had to go with the staff, and they had to return with the staff in a white band, which meant they were confined to the unit at those particular times. Well, it just so happens that the band, so that people understand this, if a person was a gold band or a green band and committed an infraction that the treatment team warranted was severe enough that they needed to go down in color, we would then take the green or the gold band and strap a white band on them for a period of time. Well, that got to be a headache and stuff because some people weren't allowing us to do that. And as I was first hired and stuff, I looked at everybody's band, and they had some green bands and gold bands and stuff, and I was the one, as the new kid on the block and stuff, I was the person who was letting them out the door and letting them on ground. Well, my staff kind of okey-doked me and told me that I let a person out that shouldn't be out. And come to my attention that I not only had to look at the band that that patient was wearing, but I needed to look at a board that spoke to the privileges that was inside the office. Not knowing this and thinking about how wonderful my teammates were, I went out after him. And the patient told me, when I asked him, I said, "You have to go back to the unit." He said, "What for?" And I told him and explained to him, which he knew that already. He says, "I'm not going back." And I then looked at him and said, "Look, I'm kind of a new guy here. I let you out by accident." I said, "Come on, well, help a brother out. You know? Let's go back to the unit." He looked at me and he said, "All right, you're kind of new here. I'm not going to take advantage of you that way. So I'm going to go back to the unit. But if you don't start checking that board," he says, essentially, "I'm out. Next time you let me out, I'm gone." And I said, "Whoosh," and I'm thinking, this is a load off of me. As I started to go back, I looked back and he didn't move. And I asked him, I said, "Come on, let's go." He said, "Before we go," he asked me, "Who's your daddy?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Who's your daddy?" And it was something most of the patients were saying at the time and stuff. So I figured, give him an answer, get him inside and stuff, and then tell him, "I'm not your daddy." So what happened was I said, "I am. You are my daddy."
Wow.
So I said, "Okay, now I'll go in with you and stuff." And that patient, actually, we wound up having a real great rapport and stuff. He's kind of a jokester. He's no longer here, but again, that was 30 years ago.
So you adopted a don't say no and kind of a very almost a peer-to-peer approach, saying, "Hey, give me a break. I'm new," rather than an authoritarian voice. You use more of a brotherly voice yourself, to use a phrase. I mean, and was that, do you think, just part of your nature, or more kind of an intuitive sense of what would bring the situation to a peaceful resolution?
Well, I was looking for a peaceful resolution all the time. It'd be shocking to have somebody new here and then having to go hands-on and calling on the radio.
Oh, God.
You know, and these are kinds of things that probably happened before, but, you know, I got to know the patients in a different way. Even and I think that was in my first week here at the hospital when I did that, first few days.
Wow.
So that was kind of me looking at the patient and stuff. And he had been, you know, I'd been around the unit for a couple of days and a couple of hours and stuff. And he wasn't one of the ones who became dysregulated and violent and stuff. He just wanted to get out and he just put one over on staff. And very funny guy.
Did patients try, I mean, we had it on a board, but did patients try to doctor their bands so if they were white that they would color them in green or gold? Or did you have any, I mean, I'm sure you've seen everything so far as subterfuge goes there.
Yeah, white bands. They would keep bands from other people.
I see.
If your band came off and stuff, you kept it and you were able to sell it to somebody else.
Oh, man.
Band, you know, said, "I'll give you a blue band, this green band for $1." You know, they try to put it on and put tape around it, you know, clear Scotch tape so you can't see where it breaks. And that's why you got to read the board. So I was a board reader after that.
I'll bet. You know, you talked about that you used to wake people up by turning on the lights abruptly or banging garbage cans together. And, you know, you wrote me something, and for our last question today, DC, I want you to maybe, I'm going to read a comment that you sent me while preparing for this interview. You titled the comment "An Epiphany," and it says this: "As an idealist, I've often imagined that people today who work in our hospitals and treatment facilities look back over the past 25 to 30 years and say to themselves how archaic and barbaric our practices were. So the question again can be asked: how will people 25 to 30 years from now see us? What will they think and say about us and our present practices?" Well, what about that, DC?
Well, this component, I'm going to explain this in a couple of ways. I'm going to use some other literature here. There used to be a program called PART and stuff, which was Patient Assault Response Training. We were involved in that for a period of time, but then we moved to PROACT. And one of the reasons is when you say Patient Assault Response Training, that means the incident already took place. Now it's response training, how to respond to something like this. In looking at prevention and preemption, pre-crisis kinds of situations and pre-intervention kinds of things, we were looking to get ahead of those things. We were looking to, at the time, and I have a few staff that are involved in this practice too. We were looking, what if? When we use the debriefing model, the post-vention model that CPI provides and stuff, one of the questions we ask is, did this have to happen? We want to look back and, if we put a person in seclusion, if we put a person in restraints, for heaven forbid, if we have to take an action and stuff that is not consistent with the care, welfare, and safety of the patient and the staff, we question ourselves and stuff. And in questioning ourselves, we found better ways to do things. Dialogue and rapport building is probably two of the key elements or key components. CPI spells it out pretty good because they talk about you have 3 opportunities to be a team leader if there's a problem or a crisis occurring. The first person on the scene, the person with the most experience and is comfortable, or the person who has the best rapport. And we use these models and stuff like that, but we don't use them when there's crisis. We try to touch base with people prior to crisis. If there's a person expecting a package and it's been disruptive Monday and stuff, Tuesday I'm going to visit this person before they even have an opportunity to come out on the ground and let them know that I'll look into the post office for his package. If there's a person that can't make it to group and stuff and they're expecting a visitor and stuff, if it's appropriate and stuff and it's telephone hours and stuff, I'll say call to see if your visitor is there. We do a lot of things preemptively and proactively and stuff. We don't wait for the crisis. And that's basically the changes that I think we're going to make. There'll be a lot more preventative measures, I believe, in the next few years and stuff, instead of having to learn a particular intervention that deals with a particular outburst or crisis or event. And stuff. We're not going to wait for that. One of the models I use too is I ask the question, would you rather be a fireman or a firefighter or a fire preventionist? And people have asked, what's the difference and stuff? Well, one is you're out there fighting the fire and stuff, which is a good thing. But if you can prevent the fire with smoke alarms and things like that, and make sure you don't have open flames in your areas with candles and stuff, that goes a long way and stuff. And most people, and that's the idea I want. People to look at how to prevent these things from occurring and stuff. I would like them to spend more time in these particular areas and stuff instead of waiting for the event, the crisis event to occur, and then try to deal with it that way.
So making prevention a foundational element is really the heart of progress in treatment.
Well, I would think so and stuff. There's a lot of people who agree with me. Now, some things are going to happen.
Right.
If I can give you one more analogy.
Please do.
If your house, in the training, some of the things I go through so they understand prevention and preemption a little bit better. I talk about if your house was burglarized, what are some of the things that you would have to do? It's funny though, because a lot of people leave out notifying their spouse. They want to know what was taken. They're going in the house, and there's a couple of things that are wrong. That are not right. To enter a house that's already been broken in and stuff, you still might find the perpetrator still there. So I make sure that they understand that. But most of them say, I call the police and stuff. And I want to ask, does that guarantee getting your stuff back, what was taken? And they understand no. And then I say, okay, are there measures you can take? And it's put signage up, get a dog, get a screen fence and stuff. Make sure there's a peek hole and stuff. Put bars around your window and stuff. Put a gate, an outer gate that you need access to, an access code to go to. Again, up to and have a firearm and be trained in it as well and stuff like that. Get lighting in the area and stuff, a lot of lighting. Trim your hedges, things like that, so you can see very clearly and stuff. You have a lot more visibility, those kinds of things. And I asked the question, people contributed to those solutions, and I said, does that guarantee that your house is not going to be robbed? And they say no, but it's a better way. If an individual sees a home like this or a home that's not protected, he's going to go for the easier one and stuff. So you're doing some things to prevent the occurrence or preempt the occurrence of somebody robbing or breaking into your home. So I want to make sure that they have that kind of understanding, and I use other examples as well and stuff. So we try to do those things that would preempt a crisis or an outburst, a crisis or a dysregulation kind of event from our patients and our residents.
I see. Well, that's an excellent example of again, you can't you can't indemnify yourself against any scenario that might require more than verbal intervention, but you can take every reasonable measure to see that prevention is in place beforehand.
Yeah, and again, you may still get robbed and stuff, but these little lessons I think are important. And our new classes, our new employee orientation, our trainers get an opportunity to speak to that particular issue and stuff. And we have several of them. And can I give you one more?
Please.
We have what's called objective and directive and stuff. And one of the things that occurred once is the doctor had called. There was a code, and the doctor wanted this individual in his room so he can calm down. The individual was in the day room area and stuff, and he says, "I'm calm right now, I'll stay here." And he asked for some PRN medication. And the doctor said, "Well, I want him in his room." At that particular time, I was speaking with the doctor and the team, and I said, if I don't want a power struggle here between you, and if you say take him in his room, that's what's going to have to happen and stuff. And I understand that. Is there any way that he can possibly remain out where he is now, and if he's appropriate and stuff? Because the objective here is to have him calm down. The directive is to go to his room. And in this way, the doctor and I kind of thought it out and came to the same conclusion that the objective was what we want to accomplish as opposed to the directive. So they gave him his PRN medication. He stayed in the day room until he was a lot better and more grounded and stuff. And the rest of the day was cake.
That's a very keen distinction between directive and objective. All right. Well, DC, I want to thank you for being our guest today. My guest on Unrestrained today has been DC Foster. He is a behavioral health intervention specialist at Arizona State Hospital and a CPI master level certified instructor, as you certainly heard in our interview today. So thank you so much, DC.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you all for listening. Thank you for joining us today on Unrestrained. Tune in again soon for another interview with an expert in behavior management. Until then, this is your host, Terry Vitone, hoping your intention is prevention.